everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. So the outline for today, just so that you know what you're in for, we're going to talk about what the hierarchy is and what it does. We're going to give you a couple of examples of what your hierarchy might look like. Give you tips on how to review your hierarchy and what specifically you should be looking for. And then we're going to talk about the updating process. So the fact that you can do that manually or you can do in bulk using the CSV upload process. And you can't talk about hierarchy in Talis Aspire without sort of briefly mentioning how you can do it in Talis Aspire copyright clearance as well. So the hierarchy in Talis is a very important tool. It's the structure for your lists, and it helps connect a lot of different elements and systems, and also helps facilitate some internal processes. You can link it to student entitlements, so that means that you can populate the My Lists area for students with the lists for those units that they've enrolled in if they exist. That's a little bit of work that you do on your end with your identity IDP, but we can help you with that if you're interested or if that sounds like something that you might want to do. It assists in searching and discoverability of reading lists from the home page. It feeds information to allow you to scope the list publisher permissions to only those staff who should really need to access and edit lists. So that might be something that you want to consider if you do have a concern about academics accidentally editing a list that's not actually theirs. It is a concern that some universities have. We haven't seen any issues around it, but as I said, it is a concern that some universities have, and if it is one for you, then you might like to think about the scoped list publisher permissions. It helps with the LTI. So the LTI is a framework developed by IMS Global Learning Consortium to provide a secure real-time communication between learning applications and platforms like Talis Aspire. So the LTI enables interactions between the tool, between content, resource consumers and providers. If you use this, this is how the majority of your reading lists will be accessed by students and most likely academics as well. It also helps reporting. So you can get a lot of data out of the information that the hierarchy can provide, or helps you make connections with the data rather. So, for example, the number of lists associated with a unit, you can see which areas in your university are making the most out of Talis Aspire and which ones aren't using it. And then you can sort of make investigations or potentially assumptions on, okay, that's more of a practical unit. They've got less text to read and it's more a doing subject rather than a theory subject. So that makes sense. And that sort of thing. It can help you target your engagement as well through that. So if you know that there is a school or faculty that aren't particularly using Talis Aspire reading lists, but you know for a fact that they have some copyright material uploaded into their learning management system, or if they're directing students from within their learning management system to paid resources, you might like to show them how they can collate all of that information into one ready list. It helps with requesting digitizations as well. So having a list linked to a node on the hierarchy will automatically populate the course details in that digitization request form. That reduces the possibility of human error when completing that request form, because we all know that most course codes are a set of letters and numbers, and sometimes letters and numbers can get a bit fudged in your head. And so when you're typing that out, you might add an extra space, or you might put a G where a C is and that sort of thing. So as I said, linking a list to the hierarchy will automatically populate that information, and so they won't have to worry about updating that. So the next two slides are examples of different hierarchies which you might have at your institution. So the first one is a multi-level hierarchy. And we call it multi-level because there are multiple levels. So below the institution, you've got faculties. Below faculties, there are modules, and beneath those modules, you've got units. You might have a different structure. So instead of faculties, you might have schools, and then below that modules, you might have faculty, then school, then units. But the gist is that it's multi-level, so it's not just institution and below that nodes. So when I talk about a node, I am talking about one of these boxes, and that's what we call on the hierarchy. So each hierarchy entry is known as a node. So that's what I'm talking about. When I talk about nodes, I'm talking about an entry on your hierarchy. So in terms of getting information, it's important to identify a source of truth. Most universities use the source of truth to be their learning management system, or you could use your student registry if your learning management system is not a reliable source, or another location from the university where that information is stored and reliable. So that was the multi-level. This is a flat hierarchy. And this is what I was talking about before in terms of just the institution node. And then below that, you've got your units or courses or modules or whatever you want to call them. Ways to review your hierarchy. So you've got your management information dashboards, which give you a high-level summary. And you can also look at your hierarchy snapshot report, which gives you more detail about the connections and that sort of thing. So this is what your management information dashboard would look like if you've got a multi-level hierarchy. So you've got the institution in the middle, example University 1, and then below that you've got a bigger node that's linked to smaller nodes that might have smaller nodes linked off of that as well. So this is a nicely connected hierarchy. There doesn't look to be any nodes or dots that are not connected to anything in any way. The size of the dot references how many connections it has and lists it has below it. For the purpose of reviewing your hierarchy, as I said, I would take a look and make sure that there aren't any little dots that aren't connected, so that don't have a little line between one dot and themselves. So this is what a flat hierarchy would look like. As you can see, it's just one institution in the middle, and then it's got lots and lots and lots of little dots leading off of it. It's a little bit more difficult to see from this one if there are any unlinked nodes. So in this case, I would recommend that the best place to look at this is to look at the hierarchy snapshot report. So just the difference between the hierarchy snapshot and the management information dashboard is the management information dashboard is a pre-configured report. You aren't really able to customize that in terms of the way that it looks. You can export it as a CSV, and then from there you can filter it using Microsoft Excel, but there's no on-screen filtering ability. Whereas in the hierarchy snapshot, you can filter so that you can export specific criteria. Another important difference between the two is that once you've exported them, the hierarchy snapshot report gives you the parent association information. So just to visually see that, I've downloaded some. So the top one on this screen is the hierarchy snapshot report. And as you can see, there's lots and lots of information that's exported. So you've got the code, a link to the node, what type of node it is, course, module, subject. Next to that, it's got the name, description, JAX code, parent node, and then the number of lists. So there's lots of information in the hierarchy snapshot, and you can see that parent connections, and you can start to filter the parent connections. It also lets you review the type of connection, because you can see on here we've got one that's actually linked directly to the institution, as well as another node. So you might, in this case, we might like to check that out and see why it's connected to those two. It might be fine, but it might be something that you want to check out. So that's the hierarchy snapshot report. The list coverage dashboard, or on the management information dashboard reports, is slim in that it's giving you the name, a link to the node URL. I've deleted these because this is CST and it is quite messy, whereas this is nice and neat and it's from a real university. So you can see that it's nice and neat. It's got the name, the node code, the node URL. It doesn't have the code. It's got the type, and then the lists, and then the percentage coverage. This basically relates to if there are any nodes underneath it. Does it have a list? Yes. If it doesn't have a list, then the coverage is missing for that module or course. So that's hopefully helps you identify which one you would want to use if you're reviewing a certain aspect of your hierarchy. So in terms of options for updating your hierarchy, there are two options, as we talked about earlier. There is the manual update. If you've only got a few nodes to update or change or add, manual is the way to go because you've already got that information. Just search, edit, update, and it's done. The bulk update, I'd recommend that you use it if you're updating a lot of data because it's faster to generate that CSV report than it would be to manually go to each one of those many nodes that you need to update. So to manually update your hierarchy, you need to go to edit. You need to have the edit nodes permission. And this is a permission that's currently generally scoped to the system admin role, as well as the node editor role. At your university, though, you may have repurposed the node editor role for another use to give another set of permissions. So if you do want to check out who has the edit nodes permission, you can go to your tenancy and go to roles and invites, and then from the roles tab it lists out all of those permissions underneath each role. Or you can just send us a support ticket and we can give you that information. If you have the permission, you can edit the nodes. You can edit the name, the type of node it is, whether it's a module, course, subject, etc. You can update the code, update the description, the student numbers associated on that, and also where it sits in the hierarchy, so what its parent code is. There is a really awesome support article that steps you through how to edit manually, but if you do get stuck in this and anything, raise a ticket and we can help you work through what's going on. So the bulk update allows you to add new courses, update existing codes, so update the details, all of the details, codes, type, title, parent associations, description. It lets you delete nodes and it also lets you merge modules. It also allows you to add student number information, JAX codes, and all sorts of stuff. Just a note on the student numbers that the figure is overridden on the review screen if the list has been given student numbers specifically. So if you're in reviews and you're thinking that, you know, I've updated the student numbers on the module to be this number, except in reviews it's showing as this number, just check out on the list in the list information what the student numbers are for that course, because it might be that there is student numbers on the list, in which case delete them on the list and then it will use the student numbers on the hierarchy node. So that's the bulk update. This is just going to walk you through how to do that bulk update, because it is a little bit, there's a few steps. Certain columns must be present in that file in order to actually go. You need to create and upload a separate file for each level of the hierarchy that you're updating, purely because if you want to connect one node to another, the node needs to exist first. That's the easiest way to describe that. There's a limit of 15,000 lines per file. So again, breaking it down into multiple sections, or levels rather, it just helps fulfill that 15,000 lines per file, helps break it down a little bit easier. We always recommend top down, again, so that it creates the node that you want to link a below node to. I do have an example of what this looks like, or can look like, and what, just close these so that there's not so much happening on screen. So your CSV file needs to have at least these first 4 columns. So it needs to have the old code column, it needs to have the new code column, it needs to have the node type, and it needs to have a name. These other columns are available to add into your CSV file, and it will update information on the hierarchy, but they're not required fields. So if you don't want to have a description, just delete that column. If you don't want to have the JAX code, just delete that column. Parents, I would recommend you have parents, but again, that's up to you. And student numbers. If you don't put student numbers on your hierarchy, then again, just delete that column. So I've added a few examples because depending on what information you've added into these cells, it does a certain action. So if you've added an old code, but you've left the new code blank, that will delete that node from the hierarchy. If you're wanting to add a new code, there's no old code to update, so you leave that cell blank. You add the new code and then the information that you want to add to the hierarchy. So again, the description is not required, so you can leave that as blank if you want. The parent code does need to exist. So that is something to be aware of and really careful of, that you're adding a code for a parent that actually exists and that it's the correct code. And we also talked about updating an existing node. So you might have an old code and its code is ABC1111. Oh, sorry, 111. And you want to update it to ABC112. So you do that. Old code is ABC111. New code is ABC112. Stays as a unit. The name might be the same or it might be different, but it does need to have an entry there, otherwise it will blank it. And you might choose use the description field to state what you are updating from. So prior to 2020, December 2020, this node was ABC111. Parent association and that sort of thing. So these are just comments on what that line does. So in your file, you would not have those columns. You would just have the columns that you're wanting to upload. So once you've got your file ready, you make sure that it's saved as CSV UTF-8. All of this is in a support document, but I find it works for me to see it done live as well as have the documents. So CSV UTF-8, save and give it an appropriate title. And save. So that's all ready to upload into Talis Aspire reading lists. As I said, there's a really great hierarchy data format support article which details exactly what you can do, and it gives, again, the structure of what the columns need to be and any sort of requirements or things that aren't permitted in those columns. And just, yeah, any sort of notes that there are. The mandatory columns, if you forget, always go here because it has it in this support document. The valid node types, it's just nice to have a list online so that you can go there instead of having to log into your tenancy and then click the menu. And then again, the rules. Oh, should be limited to 8,000 lines. That has been updated since I last updated, I last uploaded. There we go. So 8,000 lines. This is why it's really important to double check what's going on. Below it gives you some examples. So if you're making an addition, do I need anything in the old code? No. New code? Yes, yes, yes. And then any other information. Deletion, all you need is the old code. If you're updating anything, need information in all of the fields that you're uploading. Code changes, again, merges, no changes. And then it links to the full process, which is what we're going to talk about next. So personally, I find it really useful to see visually a flowchart of the processes. So I've created one. So step one is preparing the files. Once you've got your files prepared, you upload your hierarchy and run your dry runs. You've then got a question there whether once it's completed, are there any failures? Yes, there are failures. Then you need to view the exception report for details, prepare those or re-prepare those files, updating where there are errors or failures, and then try again, upload, run the dry run until you don't have any failures. Once there are no failures, you can initiate the hierarchy update. And that's really, really important because the dry run doesn't actually update any information. It's just a dry run to make sure that there aren't any failures and to make any recommendations about what happens. So it could be that in deleting a node, you're making some child nodes. So that means that, you know, some nodes were associated with that as a parent, but you're wanting to delete it. So that might be something that you want to review before actually processing your hierarchy update. Once you've initiated your hierarchy update, it will complete on its own. It can take up to 48 hours. And that's because it just joins a queue in the back end and it will process behind all of the other things that are happening on the front end. So what I mean by front end is things that you're doing directly on the system. So adding items to reading lists, editing list information, reviews, all that sort of stuff is front end stuff. And the hierarchy updates in bulk are done at the back end. So they're added to a queue and processed. Can take up to 48 hours. So step one is creating the file. Again, the presence of data in mandatory columns determine which action is taken. Always do a separate file for each level of the hierarchy and then unload it from top down. So you're not going to need to upload a new institution, but you will need to, you might have different faculties. Your faculties might change, they might restructure, that sort of thing. And the file size limit is now 8,000 lines rather than 15. I'll need to update these for next time that I run this. And just a note here that it's not harmful to have old codes in your hierarchy. If you've got some units that aren't running this semester, don't feel like you need to delete them, because if there's a code there, it's going to be found by a student and they're going to say, okay, the code doesn't have any lists, so either, you know, I don't have a reading list on this subject this semester, or this subject's not running, I need to contact someone. And it allows you to have that communication. That's versus if you don't have a hierarchy node and you search for a code and it doesn't exist. That can be a bit confronting. If the code does exist, at least you've got that start of a conversation of, okay, well, at least I have a real code. Maybe it's not running this semester. So once you've prepared your files, you go on to step two, which is uploading the file. Uploading the file validates the file contents to make sure that it's in the appropriate file type. So it's a CSV UTF-8, and then it initiates the dry run. You get a little pop-up message on the top of the screen that says your file is being uploaded, dry run has been initiated, and we'll email you once it's completed. Don't do any other hierarchy uploads until that dry run is complete, because you can't. So you can have all of your files ready, but you should only do one dry run at a time. So when you start your dry run, it'll instantly appear in your review job screen. So for any system admins, you'll get the review job screen. You can jump onto that screen and see the progress. So for example, this one says it's in progress, which means that it's ticking along in the background. So the available statuses for this page are requested, in progress, failed, and complete success. To get information about that, you can actually click the actions button and then download the exceptions report. And that'll give you information about what's failed, which lines of the report need to be reviewed. You'll get an email notification once that's completed. So the person who set it off, so in this case, Emma, once that hierarchy upload dry run completes, she will get an email notifying her that that is completed, and it'll have a link to this page so that she can see what's going on. Once it's completed, just check out the exceptions report and see any details. It'll say, again, if you're creating any orphan nodes, it'll say if you're trying to upload and create a new code and that code already exists in the hierarchy, that sort of thing. All of that information is available in that exceptions report. So again, the dry run does not update live data. It just is a dry run, and it gives you a report about whether it was successful and how many failed and what sorts of things you might like to review before actually kicking off a real hierarchy update. Once you're ready, if you're happy, you click the three dots and click Initiate Hierarchy Update, and that will kick off the updating of the live data. So again, prepare the files, upload the files to initiate a dry run. Once that dry run completes, check if there's failures, view the exceptions report for details, edit the files, upload the files, run the dry run again. Once you're happy, actually initiate the hierarchy update to update the live data, and then that will complete in the back end. We can't talk about hierarchy and hierarchy codes in Talis Aspire without talking about them in terms of your copyright clearance materials. So the hierarchy does not exist in the same way as it does in Talis Aspire reading lists. Updating your hierarchy in reading lists does not update the codes in copyright clearance. So they're two very important pieces of information. To see the information about what courses are in your copyright clearance area module, go to reports and then report by courses. That will give you a full list of all the courses that have ever happened in your copyright clearance area. You can use that screen to filter by date ranges, specific course codes, request statuses related to those course codes, all sorts of wonderful, wacky things you can filter. You can also use this report to update course information. And a caveat there is that if you're updating course information from, so for example, if you've already run your rollover in Talis Aspire Copyright Clearance, and then you get notification that actually a course code has changed or course information has changed, no stress. You just go to reports, report by courses, search for the old code and the filter by the date range, and then you can update the course information using the three dots. It does need to be unique, because this process of updating the course codes using the report does not rerun the copyright clearance checks. So, for example, if you've got someone that accidentally misentered a course code in their digitisation request form, you can't use this to update one of 4 requests to match the other 3. What you would need to do is copy that request with the wrong details into a new request with the correct details, and then withdraw the original request. So I've been sitting for a little bit, so it's probably gonna not like it when I start to do stuff, but this is the courses report. And as I said, you can filter by request, like request dates, course dates, which is what I always love. All sorts of request types, whether they're new requests or rolled over requests or just all requests, and then the start and end dates. So see how many courses start with testing in Broadminster. Oh, no, it's not going to log me in. Sorry. Hang on. Here we go. So there are 6 courses over the life of this Broadminster tenancy that have had testing in the title. Awesome. That's not as many as I thought there would be. And you can see that some of them have the same codes, but there are multiple lines, and that's because the dates are different. So it could be that actually someone's misentered the dates, and this is how you can see that on there as well. So you can see that you know, this course was run from September to August. This is the same course, ignore the other information over there. This is the same course, but instead it was running from March, let's say 2011, until the same August 2012. So these are the same courses, should be the same classes, but there's been an issue in when the request was made. So what we need to do is view the requests for that course and then do that copy request workflow just so that the information is correct. Of course, that won't work if it's in the past. It is just something you'll need to be aware of. So actions, edit course details, and this is the information that you can update. Course name, course code, student numbers. Again, the course code needs to be unique, so you can't merge using this report, if that makes sense. Cool. So that is all about hierarchy and courses across Talis Aspire. I will open up to questions now. If you've got any questions relating to hierarchy, please do pop them in the questions box. While I'm waiting for you to type, I will just do the regular reminders that we have some upcoming webinars. We've got the Talis Aspire product update webinar happening tomorrow. Again, if you can't attend, but you want the information, register for the webinar and we can send you the link afterwards. And then also we've got our November webinar, which is preparing for success in 2021. So all the sorts of things that you need to think about, processes that you might want to review, settings that you might want to review, double check that you've let us know if you're making any changes, any system-wide changes, all that sort of stuff we're going to be covering in our November webinar. We've got some webinars happening in Europe as well. So do just check them out. Go to talis.com/events. Doesn't look like anyone has any questions, which is great. Hopefully that means that it's all clear. If you do have questions after this webinar has finished, don't hesitate to raise a support ticket. If you would like us to help you review your hierarchy for your institution, again, raise a support ticket and let us know specifically what you're wanting to check out, and we can help you. Cool. Thanks so much, everyone. I hope you have an awesome day. Look after yourselves, and for those of you who are attending the product update webinar tomorrow, I'll talk to you then. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.